What is going on, investors? Hope you guys are doing well out there. It is a Friday, and that means it's time for the FAANG Stock Recap Show here on the Investor Channel, where every Friday we recap all the major news and the technical chart patterns from all the major FAANG stocks, the Magnificent Seven stocks, whatever you want to call them. One thing that I will note that is slightly different about this week is I'm recording this at 10:50 a.m. Pacific time. So we have several hours to go left in the trade. These prices will bounce around and may be different from the close, but more or less by the time we get to the technical segment, I would guess most traders are going home for the weekend. And so we'll talk about that like we always do. Let's kick things off with Meta Platforms. Started the week at 593 and actually drifted lower as we're heading into an important earnings season for all of these companies. Meta finished the week right around $580. That was down over 2%. Now, the percentage of investors that are overweight the Magnificent Seven names continues to dwindle. Now, this is according to a survey, not actual hard data. I guess a survey is hard data, but it is not like they looked inside of these portfolios. However, back when the survey was taken, back in July, investors had a 49% overweight reading on the Mag 7 stocks. Now it's closer to 39%. When I see those types of things, it actually gets me excited about the names, maybe more than usual. Now, Meta is teaming up with a horror movie shop called Blumhouse to test its artificial intelligence movie generation. I have been somebody that has talked about this in a handful of videos, including videos just strictly on AI in the movie business. I think this is going to be the future of the entertainment business. Not necessarily all feature films, but you're going to have actual movies, and it's already more or less taking place to a smaller degree, but I think we're going to have full feature films where the vast majority of it is actually AI. Now, Meta is laying off some employees. Guys, you know it's earnings season when we start to see this. In fact, we'll see this with Amazon as well. These companies, they get the final numbers from their CFO, and they look for ways that instead of making $20 billion of operating profit, they could make $20.001 billion. And they lay off a couple of employees over at WhatsApp and Instagram over at Meta. Again, this company will, when they report earnings, could have clearly kept those people, and the company could clearly afford to give people meal credits and allow them to spend those meal credits however they want. However, it appears that 24 staff in Los Angeles were using their $25 meal credits to buy things like acne pads, wine glasses, and laundry detergent. And the employees that did it over a long period of time have been let go by Meta. These are the types of things that I think these companies should get away from, but it is what it is. Now, the company might face a lawsuit. They have more important things to do to their business than these companies' employees using $25 meal credits for however they want. They're facing lawsuits saying that they profited from social media. A judge out here in California, along with attorney generals from 34 states, accused the company of profiting from young people's addiction to social media and that it causes harms like anxiety, depression, and those types of things. Most of that is probably true. Here's the problem with Meta. This sounds incredibly expensive if you lose this lawsuit. So my guess is the company is going to spend a lot of money fighting it in courts for the years to come. Now, moving on to Apple. Start of the week at 230. It looks like we're up about 2% on Apple this week. Finished the week close to 235. Again, I say finish the week. We still have some time left. Who knows what happens the last hours of the trade. But Apple's iPhone 16 sales surged 20% in China. This is according to Counterpoint Research. This is based on data that we had from iPhone 15 models back in 2023. So this is certainly anecdotal evidence that either the iPhone 15 absolutely sucked and nobody cared, or the iPhone 16 is a phone that more people want. And what they are finding is good for Apple is more people are choosing the iPhone Pro and Pro Max models. Those are the high-end, more expensive models. I tell you what, if Apple's China sales surprise to the upside, well, the stock will probably hit a fresh all-time high. Now, the iPhone 6 Pro lead times are moving up as Apple Intelligence, which is the software that the company has kind of advertised along with these phones, well, it's not available yet. However, I believe most people in the chat says this software will be exclusive to the iPhone 16 and maybe the last model or two of iPhone. So you are going to have one of the newer phones to access this Apple Intelligence. Now, I don't know if these lead times are because there's a bunch of consumers knowing or anticipating Apple Intelligence, or this could be a supply chain thing. This could just be an overall demand thing. But for the most part, the data that we're getting from Apple's demand for their best-selling product tends to be good. Now, Apple and BYD, which is a Chinese automaker, they teamed up and secretly worked on that now canceled car project that Apple spent $1 billion annually for over 10 years. So as these people fire employees for using meal credits for different types of things, I know that was Meta, but when these companies announce layoffs, understand that they dusted off $1 billion on a car project, which is literally nowhere to be seen. Now, other technology and other things probably came of that, but Apple's scrapped car projects will maybe go down as one of the biggest and most expensive failures in the company's history. Now, the company could lose a third of its Google revenue. That is for the default search engine on the Safari browser. That could go away by 2028 from the antitrust case. I'm working on a newsletter. The links to the free newsletter that will not sell your emails, will not spam your emails. That newsletter link is down below in the description. And I'm working on, the outcome and the range of scenarios for Google. We still have about a year, it appears, for it to move through the court system and to get a final judgment there. But the information is pretty good on what could potentially happen with Google, and I'll lay those things out in a future newsletter. Again, links down below. Now, Apple unveils a new iPad mini this week geared towards AI. It's going to have the A17 Pro chip, and it's an 8.3-inch liquid retina display. I tell you what, if you have one of these iPhone Pro Maxes, it's almost like having an iPad mini, but I'm sure there is a market for that. Now, Apple might release a cheaper version of the Vision Pro headset as early as next year. I don't believe this report. I believe that the Vision Pro headset will quietly go by the wayside over at Apple. I could be wrong, but by all accounts, it appears to be a flop. Moving on to Amazon, start of the week at 188, fell and then bounced back. It looks like we're about flat on Amazon this week, but the AWS CEO's comments did fall flat. He tells employees to quit if they don't want to return to the office. Here was his quote, according to people that were familiar with the matter. They said, the chief executive said, if there are people who just don't want to work well in that environment, and he's referring to the fact that Amazon is referring corporate employees to return to the office 5 days a week. So he says, if you just don't want to work well in that environment and you don't want to, that's okay. And I think he could have left this part out. There are other companies around. And so I think he realized this, and he said he did not mean that in a bad way, but we wanted an environment where we're working together. I think he could have said this first part and just said, we appreciate your time and service here at AWS, and we wish you luck in your future ventures. These companies are getting incredibly harsh with their employees. They want these employees to quit. They're finding any reason to lay them off. In the past, we thought, well, maybe this means that the financials are going to suck, but we've done that over the past year and seen this for the past year and a half, maybe even 2 years in the tech world. It doesn't mean any of that. It probably means the AWS and Amazon financials are going to be great, and they're just cutting fat because that's what these companies are doing. Now, Amazon releases new Kindles for the first time in 2 years, including a first color model, some AI models. This all comes ahead of that key holiday shopping season. Now, Amazon's latest tech giant, they're signing deals with these small SMR nuclear reactor companies, and that is going to try to help power AI. Google signed a similar deal this week. We have two of these companies, which I've talked about here on the channel, maybe the other channel as well. You have NewScale Power, which is ticker symbol SMR, and then you have Oklo, which I think was Sam Altman's backed company. That looks like it's trading up huge as well. I tell you what, I think these companies have a future, but from my perspective, they're still too speculative to invest in, but there's been speculative investments I avoided that done well, but you just have to know how to take profits, and I would guess most investors will get stuck holding the bag there. Now, moving on to Netflix. Start of the week at 7:24, And boom, we're up over 5% or nearly 5% this week on Netflix as the company reported their Q3 earnings after the bell. I posted a Netflix video yesterday. I think literally nobody cared. And you can let me know down in the comments, are my videos just absolutely sucking right now? That's possible. It's possible that the content I'm putting out just isn't very good, or it's not maybe something that a lot of investors want to consume, and that's totally fine. I'm not really sitting here trying to get YouTube views. I'm trying to make you wealthy and make you the best investor in the world. And if that's a small audience, that is perfectly fine. But I think the other thing is literally nobody cares about Netflix after the stock has run north of 100% over the past year, and it's fully valued from all accounts, from a price to earnings perspective, from a growth perspective. And I think people are just waiting for this one to give some of it back. Movement on to Nvidia. Started the week at 138. Just drifted sideways as I think we touched a fresh 52-week high. So you'll definitely want to see that technically. My apologies for skipping Nvidia technically on last week's show. You can always tune into the semiconductor show that airs on the weekend. Links down in the description below to find that video. Now, Taiwan Semi surges that this week after the company reported a blowout quarter when it relates to earnings. We talked about that in the Taiwan Semiconductor video, that the company basically telegraphed this for several months, and it is no surprise. However, the negative headlines around Taiwan Semiconductor can continue as it relates to China. There's always that China risk that China may, invade Taiwan. I don't know if that's the proper terminology, but there could be some conflict there. There always has been. But you have those export restrictions, which we'll talk about here in a moment as it relates to ASML. That relates to Huawei, I think is how you pronounce that. I've been saying it the white boy American way, Huawei, but I believe it's Huawei, and they're under probe by the United States government over potential dealings with that restricted company. Now, Nvidia did touch a fresh all-time high as the AI trade rolls on, and anytime a stock like this touches a new high, I think you'll know what that means technically now that the company is ticking up, as a lot of people just saw the eye-popping price on their new DGX B200. This is the Blackwell chip. The price for a cluster looks like to be about $500,000. That is 40% higher than the previous DGX H100 systems. So Nvidia just continuing to jack up the price. And here's the thing about Nvidia. Yeah, could we be heading for a recession? Are consumers, particularly on the mid to low end, are they stretched? Yes, absolutely. Just remember who Nvidia's customers are. They can very comfortably afford $500 DGX B200 systems. These are the world's richest companies. They really don't have to worry about it. Now, Supermicro will probably see a big boost in revenue. I don't think this company is going to see a big boost in operating cash flows or profits due to the GB200, but they are going to pass down that price and that price increase onto customers. So expect SMCI's revenue to be absolutely impressive for the next several quarters if the company can stay out of the crosshairs of the United States government and short sellers. Now, it wasn't all rosy for the semiconductor industry as ASML stock fell after their Q3 bookings, which is the business that they book, not necessarily realize in the quarter, missed estimates, which has investors worried about subsequent quarters and the growth. Now, moving over to Google. Start of the week at 164. Looks like we drifted sideways on the search engine giant as they plan to block election ads after the polls close. And I couldn't think of any other reason why you would not do that, considering when the polls close, allegedly voting is over. Now, Apple could lose a third of its Google revenue by 2028. We talked about this with Apple, and I think this headline and this outcome is more detrimental to Apple than it is for Google. Because with Apple, this money comes in and it's basically dropped off in a Brinks truck and they really don't have to do anything. It's not like they have to perform some huge exercise to get the Google search engine to work on their phones. It is basically like a drag and drop situation, and it is all gross margin and gross profit. I don't think people are going to leave Google in droves, if they lose the deal with Apple. In fact, most Apple customers will just continue to use Google as is, and maybe in some ways, this will be good for Google. I don't know. Google Cloud, though, is using NVIDIA's Blackwell, which is interesting because the company has invested heavily into their TPU, which is their custom silicon, which they partner with Broadcom to manufacture, is still a fantastic chip and is going to power particularly most of the internal tasks, Google search, YouTube, those types of things. But they are testing and running the Blackwell line, and it'll be interesting to see if Google really ramps up the buy there. Well, that would be obviously bullish for Mr. Jensen Huang's company. Now, moving on to Microsoft. Started the week at the sweet 420 and drifted a little bit lower, exhaled a little bit to 417, at least at the current time. It's now 11 a.m. here on the West Coast. Now, Microsoft leads a software pack. As the survey shows, you're going to have an uptick in IT spending. I believe this to be the case. So you probably had over the past year and a half, a lot of IT, a lot of CEOs, a lot of executives think about AI, study AI, see where they get consultants to tell where it might fit in their business, what impact it might have. We're moving into the area where you stop thinking about it and you actually go out and you implement it. Again, if you're not one of these major tech companies that this is the backbone of your operation, you're going to layer this on across ITs and corporations, and we're certainly moving out there. Now, OpenAI has partnered with Bain to expand its team to sell its AI products to industry clients. Thought this was interesting. Maybe OpenAI doesn't want to invest in their own sales and marketing staff, so they partner with an outside group. It could mean that OpenAI is just having trouble selling its products, so they have to partner with somebody to basically try to off this stuff. I don't know which one it is, but these companies are aggressively moving into trying to sell their software. Now, the company, this is OpenAI, released test versions of ChatGPT onto Windows. That will certainly get it into more hands. Now, moving over to Tesla, start of the week at 218, and Elon Musk has been campaigning hard for the former president, and his stock seems to like it this week, at least up about 1%. Now, the company is going to face a probe by government agency NHTSA, I think that's how you pronounce that, without having to say each letter individually, over a full self-driving crash, which I hope not tragically, but unfortunately struck a pedestrian, among other things. Full self-driving, I'll say it every single week. It's a great piece of software. I have it on one of my Teslas. I will be using it quite a bit today. It is somewhat dangerous. You will be going down the freeway, and it'll probably happen to me today, and all of a sudden your Tesla will brake a little bit. It'll slow down. So, it's not a piece of software where you would sit in the back of the car and be reading the newspaper and feel, perfectly safe. Now, Robotaxi has a pure play coming potentially, although these companies file for IPO and it doesn't necessarily have to come to fruition, but Pony AI plans to pony up for an IPO. No details other than that is likely coming. Now, speaking of robo-taxis, and we've discussed this, and I say I've actually discussed this internally when we're talking about newsletters, we're talking about marketing and things like that, and ARK Invest is wrong about so much, and her fund, the flagship ARK Innovation Fund, the ARKK, I believe it's underperformed virtually everything, including, I saw a graph at one point, it actually underperformed just treasuries, which is damn near having money just sitting in a bank account at this point. Her fund is terrible, but her marketing is great. And I think sometimes you can just spew out these abnormal price targets and these types of things. And if they come to fruition, they do. And if they don't, we talk about it here. And so maybe I need to get a little bit more into that and start giving these wild price targets and predictions, and maybe that'll help line my pocket with money, but in the end, I don't think it helps you, the investor, make any decisions. Now, Elon Musk transferred $700 million worth of Bitcoin to unknown wallets, fueling speculation that Tesla may have gotten out of the Bitcoin game. And if you look at the price of Bitcoin, it's probably not the worst time to hit the sell button. Now, the company landed some key approval in Germany. This was environmental approvals in Germany to expand the production capacity in Giga Berlin to over 1 million vehicles per year. So this is probably bullish for Tesla if the demand for the cars continues to follow. Now, moving over to the technical segment of the show, it is now 11:10 p.m. a.m. Pacific time. So you still have about 3 hours left in the regular trade. We have confirmed a new higher high on the S&P 500. Things just look absolutely glorious. You're waiting for pullbacks on the S&P 500. I tell you what, the first one where if you want a knee jerk is a retest of the top of the trend, obviously further pullbacks will be more exciting. Meta just made a fresh 52-week high and has pulled back from that. The company does report their earnings in a couple of weeks. Looks like the 30th of October is when we'll hear from Meta. That will be a Wednesday, the day before you go get a bunch of candy. We'll see if the company is able to hold this level, and then after you report earnings, what they've done in the past is they've actually set up at these areas in the past and been able to gap up and explode above that. The company is able to do that again. I would be very, very impressed. If you do get pullbacks in Meta, you're looking for anywhere south of 500 would be very exciting. Now, Apple actually looks like we just almost made a fresh 52-week high, as investors are anticipating probably maybe decent numbers, although the October quarter, when the company reports their earnings, looks like on Halloween actually, Thursday, October 31st, I don't think that earnings report has a ton of new iPhone data, and the company's very close to the vest. It's one of the most boring conference calls, Apple's is, but maybe they give us some indication. I don't know, and I think there was maybe a couple of weeks of iPhone selling in this quarter, and so we'll see what happens, but investors are bidding this one up heading into that important earnings season. Amazon is still looking fine. We have not confirmed a new higher high, but we continue to, at least in the shorter term, it's not a perfect technical pattern, but we are confirming some higher lows on this one. The company's earnings report will probably be a big one. They report, it looks like, at least at the current time, the same day as Apple, Thursday, October 31st. So before I take my boys out trick-or-treating, we got some work to do here on the channel. You'd like to see Amazon retest an area up over $200, because if it breaks down from here, you are likely retesting these low areas, and you'd have to judge whether or not you want to buy there, because technically you would have some breakage there. Now, moving over to Nvidia, I think this is good enough. This is what we were waiting for. If you were like me and you bought this company, I can't remember when I bought Nvidia. It was somewhere when it touched the bottom of this newly found kind of uptrend that we've been in. It's not new. It's been this way since October of 2022, but it's turned in my opinion, to the dominant trend. When you touched here, this was your chance to buy, because your upside was to make a new higher high. Now, we've done that to a certain degree, but we've really drifted kind of sideways into that. Part of that is Nvidia really doesn't report their earnings until November, so well after most of these companies report. However, we'll hear from AMD, other semiconductor companies, and again, we heard from Taiwan Semiconductor this week, and it was absolutely maybe to steal a turn from Jensen Huang and Elon Musk, it was absolutely insane. Now, nobody cares about Netflix because it is basically at an all-time high. It's fully valued. Technically, this is not an area where you're a buy. So I'll try to do a good job when Netflix has its reversal to point out the areas that are exciting, because right now it's not particularly exciting. Google has held this technical level, this black line. It's in a funky kind of pattern, but overall things still look good. We can probably clean this up, and maybe by next week's show I'll do that. Things look pretty good with Google. What you're hoping for is when the company reports their earnings on Tuesday, October 29th, you're hoping that they're good enough. The company's going to get a ton of questions on their conference call related to the lawsuits and the breakup and those types of things. You're hoping for a new higher high or a drift to a higher high. So you've got a lot of upside left with Google. You could go from 160 to retest up here at 195 with downside maybe back to 140, maybe as low as, probably 140 is your downside. So $20 in downside, you've got $30 in upside. It's not the best risk reward that we've ever seen with Google, but for a company of that size and its profitability, it's really not that bad. Microsoft continuing to just kind of float up this kind of newer found trend that it's been on, a little bit shallower of an uptrend, probably a more sustainable uptrend that the company is finding itself on now. Wednesday, October 30th, will be a big day on the channel, and it'll be a big day for Microsoft as they report their earnings. Remember, Microsoft reports earnings, but it's not until the conference call. Usually about 30 minutes into the conference call, they give you guidance. So you just want to make, if you're one of these guys that or girls that snap buy stuff in the after hours on your Robinhood app or whatever, just be mindful that Microsoft does give guidance on their quarterly earnings, but it almost always comes on the conference call. So you do have to wait for that, because the stock tends to move a little bit more when that happens. Now, Tesla is desperately trying to hold this. I'm going to change this green line to a purple line just so we can all identify it. It's trying to hold this trend, because this is actually a trend, and it's dated back to April of 2024. So it's not a long trend, but you've created a series of higher highs and a series of higher lows. this is an area where if you believe this purple trend is going to hold, and there's actually not a ton of belief in that since you didn't confirm a new higher high on the most recent move higher. However, this could be an area where the stock finds some footings and then bounces higher. If you want to take profits on a short-term Tesla investment, you would probably want to do it on that bounce, because I wouldn't want to see it retest these areas up here at 260, fail again. That is likely meaning that the buyers at higher prices have dissolved themselves, and that means lower prices could be coming. That was the FAANG Stock Recap Show for Friday, October 18th. Join me down below on social media accounts, on our newsletter, and on the other channel. Would love to see you all over there. Thanks for tuning in today. Have a safe and fun weekend. Good luck with your investments.